Charles, thank you so much for meeting with us today.
Oh, my pleasure, David.
I just wondered if we could start with your first connection to Costa Rica, how you became connected to this country.
Well, I first went in '86, just a little tourist trip, and I went again in the late '80s on a whitewater kayaking trip. But the connection really began, and I guess it must have been, was it '05 when I started. By that time I was engaged in a search for looking for somewhere to build a wonderful, walkable little beach town in an interesting tropical location. And Costa Rica wasn't the first place that I went. I had been poking around in various islands in the Caribbean. But Costa Rica had some real advantages. The biggest one really being the people, I think. It's a nice people with a culture that values a lot of the right things, education and the environment and healthcare, and so they're just doing a lot of things right in Costa Rica. And you get also a wonderful, beautiful environment both at land and at sea in a way that you don't really get in most places in the Caribbean. So that's where I settled.
At this point, could you talk about where you were in your career? Were you in between job? I mean, the Mindspring project, I believe you sold that company?
Mindspring merged with Earthlink in 2000.
Okay.
And I was the chairman of the merged company for just a few months, okay. But I then left.
Okay.
And soon thereafter started Green Street Properties with some like-minded individuals, and we built Glenwood Park, where we're sitting now. But then the bubble happened. Bubbles have a habit of following me around, it seems. And so I couldn't really see doing another project in Atlanta. Land prices were up 10 times, and everybody and his brother was building thousands of condominiums, and it was I just wasn't comfortable investing into that kind of environment. So I got this idea of building a walkable beach town down in the tropics, I guess first out of personal frustration. I love the experience of going somewhere like Seaside, which is where this whole new urbanism movement got started, and it's built on purpose over a reasonably short 25-year period of time. Wonderful, walkable little beach town, but it's in the Florida Panhandle. When we go at spring break, it's not warm enough. In the summer, it's blazing hot. There's not a particularly different or interesting culture to go be part of, or any particularly interesting nature. And so it seemed to me that idea might be wonderful to have down in some great tropical location, and it just didn't exist. So I sort of set out on purpose to try to find a place to do it.
And I believe you're going to plan to start break ground in November?
Yes, the first little batch of things will be built starting in November, 7 houses and a restaurant.
Of the 7 houses, will any of those be available to the public to buy, or will those be the directors of the company? Or?
Well, they're all pre-purchased by insiders. It's people that are owners of the company now, and our restaurateurs are buying one of the houses as well.
At what point will we get to the stage where the public can actually buy?
Well, soon. We have needed to keep our limited resources focused on doing a great job on this first little batch of houses now. But we can and will add in small increments to that. So there should be another handful of houses or so that we have kind of scoped out and ready to sell to people sometime in the next few months.
Okay. And I know that part of what you're trying to do is preserve as much of the green space as you can. Only build on 20% of the total acreage, or something like that, or?
Yeah, I think it's about 15% or so. But the idea is to have a very compact town, but a town with a substantial amount of things in it. So a lively place, but at the edge, it's the edge, and then you're out into this wonderful nature preserve. So you get this gem of a little town surrounded by a great nature experience both on land and at sea.
And will it have kind of a Mediterranean feel to it?
The pattern of the development is sort of Mediterranean. It's probably closer to a Mediterranean hill town than it is to anything else now. But it won't really quite look like that. But it will be, you know, little pedestrian streets. Most of the streets will not allow cars on any normal basis, just if you have something heavy to deliver to a house or something like that. So it's really a pedestrian town with a lot of slope, and which is kind of the magic ingredient, because you take this compact urbanism, if it's on the flat, it can be, you know, quite wonderful in some ways, but privacy is hard to achieve, and you know, you're kind of crammed for views. But if you take it all up on a slope, all of a sudden everybody gets a great view, and our views are just incredible. And everybody gets privacy, because if, you know, a house is here and one's up here, they really are private from each other, even though they're in quite close quarters. So all of that is sort of Mediterranean, but the architecture will be more open, more tropical, more about outdoor living, more about taking advantage, full advantage of the views. So it won't exactly look like those Mediterranean places, even though it'll have a lot in common.
When it's totally built out, how many residences will we have there? How many houses are?
Probably 2,000 to 3,000.
Okay. So it actually will be a town.
It'll be a full town. And that will take a very long time. I mean, decades and decades. You know, much longer than I will be around, even under the best of assumptions and circumstances. It'll take a long time. Is
that intentional on your part? In other words, you don't want to rush it. You don't want to.
It is to some extent. There are, you know, a variety of places. You can probably think of some that are built sort of all at once, and you know, big hunk of financing and big hunk of money, and boom, here's this supposed village where there was nothing before. And I have just never seen it work. You know, the places that have worked much better have been places like Seaside that started very modestly, you know, a few houses. And so I think that creep out, not leap out, seems to be, for some reason, really a necessary ingredient in creating a great place.
But you got to have patience. You have to have the patience in order to do that.
You have to have patience. You can't lever up with lots of debt and expect it's all going to happen right away, because and in this environment, you know, it couldn't anyway. So you know, this economic environment that we're in sort of suits our business plan, really, and we're not dependent on building some, you know, big $100 million hotel to kind of give us a reason to exist. Our reason to exist is the town, and you know, our first anchor of the town is this wonderful Lola's del Norte restaurant, and you know, that we can do even in this environment, and I think it works better anyway.
It's kind of refreshing in a way.
It's different, and I think it feels better to me.
And you also have Delta flying directly there, right? Which is that from Atlanta? Delta from Atlanta, and Continental from Houston and Dallas, and Delta from Los Angeles and New York. So with a lot of Liberia Airport's gotten quite a nice little roster of flights, so it's an easy direct flight there. I think it's only about 4 hours from Atlanta. Yeah, scheduled time is about right. Flying time 3.5. Which is about what most people spend in rush hour here in Atlanta every day. Yeah, every morning. My joke is it's actually easier to get to Las Catalinas many days than it is to get to Roswell, which isn't quite true, but well, you know, another it's point pretty easy. It's probably faster than driving to the seaside. It's, you know, by the time you factor in lead time to get to the airport and everything, it's about the same door to door as it would be going to Seaside or the Georgia coast or something like that.